Well, in the 80s, Transvision Vamp was colourful, electrifying and outrageous. The UK pop punk band made waves on the charts with hits like I Want Your Love and Baby I Don't Care.
And at the helm was Wendy James. The bleach blonde bombshell embarked on a solo career after the band split, and after a brief hiatus, she's back with more.
From Madonna to Chrissy Amphlett to Joan Jett. Over the past few decades, female singers have made their mark in the music industry thanks to their big vocals and sex appeal. And Wendy James is no exception.
I don't want your money, honey, I want your love. And I don't want your car, baby, I want your...
The Transvision Vamp's frontwoman was the sex symbol of the 80s, delivering pop-punk hits like I Want Your Love and Baby I Don't Care.
No, you don't have to say you love me, baby, it's alright. 'Cause honey, I don't care.
But when the band split in 1992, Wendy went solo before taking a break from the spotlight. Now she's back with a brand new sound.
Bad intentions and a bit of cruelty.
Oh, those were the days. That was music. We're joined by Wendy James now live from London. Welcome to you. Wendy, can we go back to where it all began? We're talking, I guess, nearly 30 years since Transvision Vamp formed. How do you look back at those times?
I can remember the very beginning, meeting Nick, the guitarist, and thinking that he looked like one of the New York Dolls, very glam punk rock. And him telling me all about the Velvet Underground and bands that maybe I hadn't quite yet discovered properly. And us deciding to start a band together and all making a demo tape together and then taking it to EMI Records in London. And it all happened quite quickly. And finding the other band members around Portobello Road, West London. So those bits, those early days, it took off quite quickly in England, so I remember doing things like Top of the Pops, but then being back in the pub by 7 o'clock, and not much in our lives had changed, except we were on Top of the Pops, but we were still in the pub playing pool. So, I remember a lot, and then of course it became quite huge, and then it turns into more of a blur.
Ah.
Right.
And why a blur, Wendy?
Because, you know, you've just gone international and you're doing so much work all the time and in so many countries and meeting so many people that you don't quite notice how huge it gets
At the time.
until afterwards, really.
Wendy, you considered a huge sex symbol back in the 80s. There may or may not have been a poster of you on my wall. But how did that affect your music, that focus on you being a sex symbol?
It was two different lives, really. The life that I had with the band, and we were a touring band, as you know, in Australia. The life that I had on the road with the band was very male and all, you know, all for one and one for all. But then the persona of me with my blonde hair started having a life of its own through the tabloid newspapers and various beauty press that I was getting, and so it was two different. My actual real life was very male-oriented in a band, going around the world, having a laugh, working hard. But the persona of Wendy James, the sex symbol, was a thing of its own, really.
You went solo after the band split up. You collaborated with the likes of Elvis Costello. What was that time like?
That was okay, so the way that happened, Transvision Vamp were doing our last American tour, and earlier that summer we had played a big festival in Ireland, and we were the headline one night, and Elvis Costello was the headline another night. So I was watching him from the side of the stage, and at the same time, myself and Nick in the band felt as though we were outgrowing at least what we'd been doing so far. So either we had to change or something had to happen. And then I bumped into Pete Thomas, the drummer from Elvis Costello and the Attractions, when I was staying in LA on the Transvision Vamp tour. And we were having a drink, and I just asked him off the cuff, do you think Elvis Costello would do anything with me, write me any songs. And Pete said, simply, why don't you write him a letter? And so that night, from the Sunset Marquis Hotel in Los Angeles, in Hollywood, I'm sure maybe you know it, I wrote Elvis a letter saying, I think I might be leaving Transvision Vamp. I'm not quite confident enough to do it all by myself.
Right.
Would you consider helping me? And then Transvision Vamp kept touring America, and then I got back to West London, and there was a cassette, so that rather ages this, but there was a cassette waiting for me on my doormat in West London, and it was a whole demo from Elvis.
All right, well, two things give away your age in that story, that you wrote a letter and then there was a cassette. You know,
Yeah,
of course,
right.
everything's on social media now, but back in the day, tabloid newspapers were the thing, and you mentioned those a little earlier. How were you portrayed in the tabloids? What sort of stories were they telling?
I think if anyone got an impression of me, if they were bothering to read that stuff, the main impression was maybe that I was quite outspoken.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
Well, that was part of your platform, though, wasn't it? That's what made you great.
Yeah, totally. And I think if you talk to any teenager, really, they kind of think that they know it all.
Yeah.
And that they're gonna, you know, conquer the world. So I don't think I was any different to most teenagers.
Tell us about...
Except it was...
Sorry, I was going to say, sorry, tell us about your new music. We're nearly out of time. We don't want to lose you without talking about the new music that you have coming out.
Well, I've really, since the collaboration with Elvis Costello, I have to tell you, on this new album, which is called The Price of the Ticket, and I think you're going to put up the link for Pledge Music, which is how everyone in Australia can buy it now. The people on this album is obviously myself, but also Lenny Kaye, who is the guitarist with Patti Smith, in the Patti Smith group.
Right.
James Williamson, who is the guitarist with Iggy Pop and Iggy and the Stooges.
Wow.
Glenn Matlock, the original bass player from the Sex Pistols. And James Sclavunos, the drummer from Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds,
Wow.
Grinder Man, and many others, the Cramps.
Oh,
So this is, yeah, I've really outdone myself
yeah,
on
what
this
an,
one.
what an incredible lineup. Your fans can't wait to hear that new music. Wendy, thank you very much for joining us this morning live from London. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Wendy James' new album is available for pre-order. For more information, just head to the Morning Show website. It's all there.